Hi, my name is Chris Koneski. I'm the publisher for the Des Moines Business Record. We're here today to do a series of roundtables on the commercial real estate industry, and today we're going to be talking about the office segment of commercial real estate. The videos will be out after our annual real estate magazine publishes on April 27th. And what we're doing here today is we're going to have a conversation amongst ourselves. So after this, we're not going to address the camera, and you'll see Kent Darr, our senior staff writer. He'll be taking notes as he prepares for future stories throughout the course of the year as well. But with us to help us today, directly to my left, is Justin Lossner. He's the Executive Vice President for JLL. Jennifer Mertz, the interior designer at DLR Group. And Chris Curran, Senior Vice President at R&R Real Estate Advisors. And they're going to be helping us out today. From here, I'm going to turn it over to Kent Darr. He's been with us for, 10, 12 years, however many you've been with us now, but he's been covering commercial real estate for us, and he helps put together our commercial real estate e-newsletter. So Kent, why don't you go ahead and kick things off?
I'll start with Justin. What do you see as a major trend in the office market in 2018?
Personally, I think 2018 will be a lot of continued trends, maybe more than anything. We've just seen a flood of office users moving to open, collaborative, huddle type space, all the catchphrases that I'm sure we'll talk about today. I don't know that dynamically changes next year. What could change is there's been so many major users make this transformation that you may not see as many of them. But it might hit kind of that middle of the pack group that, probably is going to look closer at staying in place and doing some sort of renewal, refresh, as opposed to the big shifting out of 60 to 100, start from fresh and go vertical. I really think we'll see a lot more of that renewal in place strategy in 2018.
Jennifer?
I agree as well. It seems like having the open concept is definitely still viable and is going forward. Just having more flex spaces within the environment itself. So the huddle rooms, the nooks, having more spaces for people to go to, especially for technology. So this technology has been so diverse that people can actually work from just about anywhere. So offices can, it can be anywhere, and more employees are actually providing more spaces, collaborative, but also the heads down type approach for those areas.
Chris?
I guess I see just continued optimism throughout the market and companies looking to reinvest in their business, and as to Jennifer and Justin's point, reinvest in their spaces, quality, more modern touches, amenities. Again, just continuing to fight for the the employee, and the economy's great. Unemployment is very low, so there's a lot of competitiveness going out there. So there's really that retain, attract, recruit mentality going on, and you've got to have your office space being technology sound and just looking good to be able to attract those employees. So I think there's a lot of reinvestment, renew in place, but maybe refresh, or remodel going on. Everything from furniture to finishes to just kind of that new open collaborative area. So I see a lot of continued trends from that regard.
Well, and we're really not talking about, in some regards, offices in a traditional office building, right? There are some pretty unique users or uses of flex space, warehouse buildings that continue and exhausted. Then what's the advantage? What's the attraction?
Yeah, I think really with Hy-Vee in there, I think they call it their Helpful Smiles group, their technology and marketing group. They certainly started that trend up in Grimes in an R&R facility, which is a warehouse, and took a very large space and put a lot of money into it to create just an amazing environment that's got amenities that you would see, at an apartment complex or home, everything from gyms, fitness, basketball courts, food, coffee, game rooms, TVs, so a running track around the facility. So I think the advantage is to maybe create that environment to again recruit employees into a unique facility where they can take advantage of all those things and yet still maintain a lower cost, because obviously that type of space is rents for quite a bit less than.
I was in that
office.
building when it was under construction yet. What do they do with that tall ceilings? I mean, it's a 32-foot.
Yeah, I think they do drop some clouds or some ceilings in some places to not just keep that open expanse, but for the most part, they've got lighting in there, and we've worked with, and Jennifer can probably answer better what they do and how to make that all work. But there's a combination of lighting, ceilings, and otherwise a lot of it is just still open exposed.
And the acoustical value of it, just to make sure that there's still those quiet spaces so that they can continue to work. But also the well-being for the employees. I mean, because that's how they're retaining them as far as they're coming in. So like nourishment areas. So they might have fresh fruit, vegetables or salads that they can partake in every day that the employer is actually providing to them. But also, like you said, running tracks, or areas that they can go to and have a quiet time, or if they just need to make a personal phone call, a phone booth almost. So it's really understanding that home environment, but yet becoming that more commercial and having the employee feel comfortable as they're being there.
It's interesting, too, to look at, you talk about suburban options versus downtown options. Holmes Murphy, every single thing that you said was critical, and they've built a beautiful precast building, 2 floors that has the fitness, has access to trails, all of the perks that you're talking about. Downtown, I feel like it's a little bit different. I mean, I think ROG was a really cool example of somebody taking, what was a theater at one point to a school to now this open collaborative workspace. What they didn't do, though, is they didn't put running tracks in there. They didn't necessarily do fitness because they're across the street from the Y. So when we work with tenant rep prospects, that locational preference really kind of drives what's in the space versus outside of the space. So it was really unique to see the industrial conversion capture all of that in this huge box at a price point that's set lower, but they were able to put all that stuff into it because of that price difference. So it's pretty interesting to see that.
And I think Holmes Murphy being lucky, there's not very many amenities right now out there. So being in more of a downtown here in Des Moines, I think it leads to more going out to Gray's Lake and being able to walk those trails a little bit more easier than being out in Waukee right now. But Waukee, I think, is going to be a place to really look for. Holmes Murphy was a great ad for that area.
Is that are you hearing, is that triggering more office development in Kettlestone then?
Every person
I know
we work
there's
with is looking
retail
at it,
that's starting to go in.
Yeah, before Holmes Murphy made their announcement, 1 in 5 prospects would look that far west, and now I'd say most of our major tenant rep, especially the folks that are going to look at, the bigger blocks of space that can really be an additional anchor. They're definitely looking at Kettlestone at this point. In addition to West Des Moines, and in addition to the downtown metro.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the ARA move, and I know you were involved with that. What did it take a lot of convincing to have the folks at ARA look at basically a parking ramp with a little bit of office or school space, really, and then say, you can really turn this into your home. How is anyone's guess, I guess.
Right. I credit ROG's leadership team. Before we even got involved, they had hired a group to come in and survey all of the staff to find out what items were important to them. After all, frankly, I think it really kind of started out as a refresh in place, but as they started to really kind of uncover more and more important issues to their staff, they really decided we have to step back and do our due diligence and look at the entire market, even though in their mind, I think they were really down the path of kind of staying in place. An independent third party kind of kicked that off, and then we got engaged. Our charge was show us everything. We toured R&R, we did tour Kettlestone, and I think in all there was 37 some odd options that they kind of narrowed down to a short list. And to the credit of the landlord, they brought in an architect, they brought in a designer, they had 3D renderings. When you stood in the space, it was still hadn't been demoed at the point, so it was brutal. I mean, it was really tough to visualize. But through the architectural team, they were really able to kind of paint this picture that everyone looked at and said, hey, I get that. That could be really cool. So there were just...
They have a really unique space now.
They do, yeah. It's incredible space.
Was it a complete shift from what they came from? I mean, was
Yes.
it traditional
Yep.
offices, cubicles, and
Yeah.
did they get an idea from another ROC office around the country? Or was it
No. So it's really unique. I mean, this is their North American location. Their next location's in Germany. So they leaned pretty heavily on this initial occupancy team to kind of talk about the trends, and then
Do more change management.
Change management,
Just making
yep.
sure everybody's comfortable and leading through the process.
And that was part two, absolutely. I mean, they had a pretty open layout, but it was all offices on the exterior, no natural light, lower ceilings, kind of all the stuff that we've seen in most of your traditional office space. But, again, through strictly architectural design and imaging, they were able to kind of get a sense of this is what it could be. The other thing that we do a lot of is we tour tenants or prospective tenants through existing spaces that have gone through that transformation already. It's one thing to look at it on paper, but it's another to actually walk into some of these really cool spaces and kind of wrap your head around it that way if you haven't been into it.
Are there some more locations in the Des Moines area, in the downtown area, that would fit that type of mold, where you wouldn't necessarily look at it as a place that you could revamp in that way, but other opportunities?
Your guys' office, I think, is one of them, actually.
Yeah, we were on the western gateway edge, and it was a car dealership or some type of automotive space, and taking that and taking the exposed beam ceilings and columns and really showcasing that. We also have a shaft that was the car elevator that actually raised up cars going up to the second floor for repair and storage. And we turned that into a conference room. And it still has all the parts and pieces and...
So do you lift it up and down? Or?
No, we can't do that now. But it's great. We do have conference rooms, but we also have other collaborative spaces. And even though we still have an open office, we can go and be whichever space we want to. So having that flexibility, plus being downtown, being right across from the park, the River Park, and just seeing all the sculptures, and it's a great vibe being downtown.
We kind of talked a little bit about Kettlestone and downtown and kind of that push and pull, and I know for a time there was a big pull out to the suburbs, and there's kind of a swing back to the middle. Does it feel like it's at kind of an equilibrium type feel, or is it swinging one way or the other?
I think there's cases of both. You're seeing cross-channel come, make a big investment come from west downtown. I think there's still quite a bit of interest from folks here going out west. So I would say there's a good balance going on right now, honestly.
Yeah, I'm seeing quite a bit of a mix depending on what's happening. I mean, it depends on what the amenities that they are looking for. Space downtown is a little bit harder to find, so they have to choose where the best spot would be for them.
Is there a typical profile of a company that would rather go, that ends up looking at the suburbs versus downtown?
I was going to say tech, but if you look at Hy-Vee,
Right.
Yeah.
Grimes, Iowa.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I've actually been surprised folks that have located downtown that, to me, fit more of a traditional West Des Moines profile. So I think that we've kind of shattered that profile, and people are now really assessing all options, which I think is good.
Yeah. Going back to your point, it's almost like people that have been here have seen downtown kind of go through a transformation, and they're sold. They want to reinvest down here and stay down here. Same thing out west. I think you're seeing if they're out there, they appreciate a lot of those perks, amenities, parking, access, whatever. So they definitely tend to want to stay. So I don't know if the millennial thing has anything to do with it. There's a lot of millennials. There's a lot of housing downtown, and maybe that is maybe a driving force for a company that would stay downtown versus.
Well, and there's
being west.
so much apartments and housing just about anywhere now. So the chances for any of the millennials or other people to move into those locations where are needed, where they are located, where work is located, is much easier now.
Is there a move to sort of urbanize some of these suburban office parks? Also, because we keep hearing about the importance of trails and quick access to restaurants and parks and the like. Some of the older office parks that people are moving from. I mean, what goes into repositioning those spaces?
Well,
make that attractive?
yeah, good question. I think just, number one, just making sure cosmetically that they're staying fresh and new and looking good. There's sometimes only so much you can do, but usually parking is the big thing in some of those older suburban buildings that you've got an advantage. And so you've got the parking, but keeping the look of the building fresh and new, and then just adding in a lot of these amenities that we've talked about, everything from conference room to fitness to food. Technology is huge, and so I think that's where you're seeing some of the transformation. I mean, I know you've got a project at Westridge that just went through some of that, added some conference rooms and fitness, and I think tenants are really, and companies are really demanding that type of service, and that type of amenity to offer their employees. So if you don't have that, you don't have a good-looking building that's at least modern and looks good, and some of those amenities, then you're probably falling behind.
Adding daylighting as well, having the space so everyone has an opportunity to see outside, definitely is better for the well-being of that person, the worker that's there. I think that helps immensely. Just again, going back to that well-being of having these amenities, but the well-being of that person, and having flex that they can go and walk these trails, or just even going out to the park.
One thing that I would just add to that, I know R&R has done a lot of it, is some of these buildings that are older, 20, 30 years old, the ceilings were lower, right? So 8.5-foot ceilings was kind of the norm, but now with the daylight and just having that high open ceiling is huge. And so some of the vacant spaces, we've just literally taken the ceiling out or look to just raise that up to bring in more light, just give it a bigger, more expansive type feel, which has been very helpful.
And there's new things that you can put into the flex spaces that draws the sonotubes and things like that that'll bring the daylight down into those spaces that may not have a lot of windows or not have an opportunity, but if you can draw it down from the top, it does give an appearance of daylighting.
Which old buildings did. I mean,
Right.
that's interesting to me to see this curve that we're on a little bit. Old buildings, I mean, 19th, early 20th century buildings, I suppose, that had like shafts built into them for heating and cooling, and to bring daylight into these dingy, what would otherwise be dingy buildings. And then we started closing everything up.
We're even seeing it in not just offices, but schools and other workplaces like automotive. You can put those type of daylighting in so that people don't feel so closed in. And it's definitely better for the person to have that daylight.
I wonder if you could talk about you've talked about a few of the amenities, but maybe some new things that maybe office users are looking for if they're doing the refresh type thing. What are some things that are maybe new, and then what are some things that maybe you would start with if you didn't have the budget to go and get a world-class architect to build your building, right?
Well, and budget-wise, you have to be careful
Right.
of some of those things, and some people don't, or some companies don't have that budget. But it's just like you narrow it down to some of the things that you really want to focus on. So it may be we're going to have this open concept, but maybe it's more we need a few more phone rooms, and maybe it's not enclosed, maybe it's just a niche, and just how you get it in there so it's acoustical, so that people can go and have a conversation, a private conversation, or need to do the heads down work and have that flexibility. So you have to be conscious of that budgetary factor, and it can be pretty easy. Square footages are getting a little bit smaller because everything's electronic. Technology-wise, it's been a lot easier for people to be able to do other things and not put it so much in the workstation, but put it into these other spaces that they need.
What are some maybe low-hanging fruit that if an office was just trying to do even a mini refresh, some things that they could do to help modernize their office?
Just having a couple of the huddle rooms, which would be smaller conference rooms, maybe 2 to 3 people, or a phone room would be something pretty reasonable to do. Another thing that they could do is do a sit-to-stand desk. That would be a big refresher to keep people going, and people are always sitting at their desk. Well, why not stand? And do it for 10 minutes at a time. sit for the rest of the 15 minutes for an hour. And then, you know, you can get up and walk around. That would be another easy thing to do.
We're seeing it kind of twofold. You mentioned furniture. I think people are spending just as much time figuring out furniture as they are as the physical walls and is it open versus not open ceiling concept. You know, if you've got, West Des Moines is a great example. I think Blue Compass did a refresh of the old Chai Battery space a few years ago, and they ripped the ceiling out. It was pretty much already wide open, but they did open ceiling with cloud system. They actually focused more on what kind of furniture they would program the space within it. You know, some sit-to-stand stuff, some flexible work environments, some huddle space that wasn't hard wall construction. It was all literally furniture pieces that they just programmed this large open space and it turned out great. I mean, it wasn't a full, like you said, world-class architect design, but it accomplished this really neat new refresh concept.
The unique aspect to that, I thought, was that they are encouraged to ride their bicycles at work. Inside that big open space.
Yeah.
I mean, is that just unique to Blue Compass? Or not
Google.
necessarily riding bikes, but.
We don't do it at JLL.
Okay. No spank ball courts in Holmes Murphy, for example.
Their fitness
Or
is
the
pretty
new
robust,
Chai
but yeah.
Battery even.
Yeah. But I think there's a lot of people that are riding their bikes a lot more to work, back and forth. I think that the opportunity is there, and especially with our trail system in the area, it's awesome to just be able to get on your bike and head downtown if you're out in Waukee or in Ankeny, and just having the amenities of like showers in the bathroom. And it doesn't have to be anything, you know, earth-shattering, you know, like a five-star hotel, but it could be just a shower so that people can change a locker room and maybe just cubbies that they use.
So if somebody did have some extra money to be spending and was looking for some cutting-edge things that maybe were going in offices from a design standpoint, is there some things that people are doing that are kind of top of mind in your world right now?
I think the wellness part of the whole, just a view of everything, the wellness part of being able to come in after you've ridden your bike from downtown or from wherever, go for a run at lunch, being able to take a shower, have the flexibility within the office to move wherever they want to. Maybe it's not, they don't have a standard station, maybe it is a sit-to-stand station, but it's a smaller one, more of like a hoteling type area. And nourishment areas, I think, is probably the biggest thing. Just fresh fruit, have apples, oranges, bananas on the counter. It's a big thing for employees to have, and know that they have the flexibility that they don't have to be eating chips or things like that.
Yeah, our daily donuts is probably not the right direction. We might need to rethink that one.
We've got cake
It's
okay, Dave.
Trucks at Westfield?
Yeah, food trucks are still a big thing. With Westfield, the new office building in West Des Moines. There's going to be a segmented, dedicated area for food trucks, food truck court. We're certainly still seeing those within the parks. Those are pretty popular on certain days in the nice weather months. So the food truck, I think people love them. You know, nice days, just it's a change of pace and something that they can go and experience on, you know, different food truck here or there that come, and it's been working well for both sides. So it's a good critical mass of people that go centrally locate in one of the parks, and people are finding them, and it's been working well. So it's just a good alternative, and it's quick, it's easy.
And there are, I think, healthy choices in
There
there
are,
as well.
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Are you guys still programming coffee and restaurants and things like that within the building? I think that's a really interesting trend that you guys are ahead of the curve on, and
Yeah.
putting some of that stuff that you naturally see in a downtown environment out west.
Right. Westfield's big enough size where absolutely we are trying to target a coffee food user to be located within the building off the first floor lobby. So whether you're certainly in the building or even, you know, a visitor or nearby can come over and take advantage of that type of amenity. So yeah, it's very much like a downtown type of an amenity. Yeah.
Should we be thinking about lunch at the Westfield building?
Sure, you can have food trucks and yeah. Lunch
Are
spot,
you
lunch
going to
spot.
carry that concept over in a smaller way possibly to the paradigm?
You know, I don't know if there's the site, the Westfield probably lends itself to those types of amenities just for sheer size, and it's 160,000 square feet, so there'll be
Right on
700
Jordan Creek
employees
Parkway,
right on Jordan
yeah.
Creek, yeah. So with Paradigm, the other new building in Urbandale, those type of amenities aren't planned to be included in that building. The food truck maybe, but some of the other inline coffee, food, not at this point, and it's just because the building is literally almost half the size, so there may not be the demand and the employees, the head count, coming and going out of that building on a daily basis.
What do you think about exterior dining, having, a picnic area or someplace
Yeah.
for people to
Yeah,
to
good
go
point.
to?
No, that's another big trend in amenity too, is just those outdoor seating, plaza, patio type areas. If you're gonna have the food trucks showing up, people may just want to, it's a nice day, stay out and enjoy lunch nearby. So that's definitely being incorporated into Westfield. And also something that R&R is looking to do within their office parks is taking a central location and just really creating a nice plaza area for people to enjoy on some of those nice days.
What does R&R see in the market that says, sure, we'll throw up 270,000 square feet of speculative office space, and we're not going to lose any sleep over this?
Yeah, well.
There aren't a lot of people
Are we sure
doing
he's
that
sleeping?
right
I don't
now.
know.
You might
Still
be.
sleeping fine.
You look well
Well rested today, yeah. Ask me in 6 months maybe, right? So I think it's just optimism in the economy. Occupancy rates really throughout the market are pretty strong. They're not crazy strong, but I think they're strong. Job growth continues to, that's the name of the game right now as companies are expanding, hiring. And I think with this whole competitive nature and trying to, again, recruit, attract, retain employees, this really creates a whole new opportunity for companies to take a look and say, wow, here, look where our office is located, and who wouldn't want to come to work in a facility like this. So you've got a prime location with Westfield right on Jordan Creek Parkway, off the interchange, probably no better location, you could argue, in the entire metro. So a good opportunity to just do some sort of a wow type of building that is going to look fantastic from the exterior and have all these amenities.
Highest office rents in Iowa.
That's right.
According to the recent JL.
We're tracking. I mean, we're tracking. It's been interesting. We talked about this initial trend of these major users like IMT, Holmes Murphy, now John Deere, ISG is doing it 130K. There's some space that's been turned over downtown. 801 Grand, for the first time in a long time, has over 100,000 square feet. Come and Go is going to vacate their facility. It's interesting. It's almost this wave that happened when Wells Fargo and Ameris at the time did this move to a different location and leave behind some space. I think we're on a smaller little bubble of that, to be honest with you. And a lot of this stuff is going to hit simultaneously. So we're tracking somewhere around 700,000 square feet of new vacancy that's going to hit the market metro-wide. So it'll be interesting because you'll have downtown opportunities and you'll have West Des Moines opportunities either through new construction or space that's being vacated. So we're cautiously optimistic, but I think it's going to be a little bit of a different year than it was in
Well,
17.
I guess that's my question. When that happened before, it created a little bit of pain for owners and lenders. And I mean, what's different?
Scale, in my mind. To me, Wells Fargo at the time, gosh, I looked at some of the research a few years ago. They had vacated, over 1 million square feet over a period of time, and it was different space that they were leaving behind too. You looked at, the Des Moines building, the Equitable building, some of these buildings that were really kind of C-class type space. We're not looking at that this round. Come and Go is going to leave behind an 80,000 square foot, beautiful Class A facility located in what you had called the very strong West Des Moines market, and I agree with that. So it's not like you're going to try to backfill the Des Moines building. Those buildings have all been converted at this point. We're not sitting here talking about 12 downtown historic conversions because they're all pretty much done. But that said, you do got this kind of unique pocket of what we're saying is 20 to 40K large block office space that's going to hit this year.
One of the things that we heard at the economic forecast just recently was that, and we've been hearing that companies have capital, they haven't necessarily been spending it. Couple that with the unemployment rate being so low, is that one of the places where we expect, where you might expect businesses to be investing in their office space then?
It's interesting because there's been so many of these people that had been in, existing space for 5, 10, 20, maybe however many years, that they were probably overdue. I don't know that there's as many of those right now. There's probably still a handful out there that are snooping around. So my personal thought is that those major announcements of here comes another 130K new construction, by the way, we're going to leave behind 100K in Urbandale, are probably to be less this year, but now we're going to deal with the 2016, 2017 announcements that are hitting the market in the next 12 to 18 months.
I guess what I have, another way of looking at Chris's question is, in 2019, we're going to know the effect of tax reform. I mean, do you anticipate more momentum in the market after that? I mean, companies have been sitting on a lot of money for a lot of years, and we're seeing some of that obviously being spent now, and more people being hired, more people at work, these office moves, new construction. 18 a little bit of a lull, then even though there is a fair amount of activity in the market, you see that picking up again in 2019 after everyone's sitting on a big pile of cash from that report.
Yeah, and maybe, I think the things not to forget about are some of these even small to medium-sized groups. We've talked a lot about the large users, and I agree that maybe there will be a little bit of a slowdown with some of those moving around, but I think there's still a lot of great opportunity for some of these small, even call it 25 employees and less. Those people are feeling good. They're feeling good about tax reform and the economy, and so they're growing, and they're looking to get into that next level of quality space. And so I think that's a whole new wave, and there's a lot of them in our market. With Des Moines, there's a lot of those small to mid-sized groups that hopefully can tend to kind of bubble up and fill up some of that space and move into that category from medium to big or small to medium. So
You called it snooping, right? Or you're starting to explore, so maybe 2018 might be a year where those type of businesses maybe start exploring a little bit on that front, or exploring the refresh option as another potential, or either or, right?
Yeah, it's how do you do that expansion if you're, like you said, Chris, that 5 to 10 growing to 15 to 20, right? There's a really nice pocket of space that major companies will be leaving behind. So it'll be interesting to see, which goes back to my first point, how these companies go into space that's not brand new construction, here's my wish list. It's more of, here's an opportunity, how do I make it my own? Is it through furniture? Is it through natural light? By taking offices off the glass? I think we'll see a lot more of that in 2018. We are seeing people expand, so we're certainly not saying it's doom and gloom with this pending vacancy. I just think it's going to be a different type of activity this year, where we're now absorbing the space and coming up with creative ways to do that.
The other thing we're seeing is like the rework type spaces. These companies are growing, and they're using those spaces temporarily until they can really establish themselves, and then go into other spaces. And that's where we're able to help them out, establish where they need to go. Same with Justin and Chris, is just getting those spaces prepared for them.
Say the term again, rework?
WeWork.
Oh, WeWork.
Yes.
WeWork, sorry.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And just so that they, because right now they're in that collaborative type space in that work area, but so they want the same thing. They like those feelings of the availability and to different amenities, and continuing on.
That's a great point too. I mean, we work with Regis, who acquired the Spaces concept, and it's actually the incubator method of, someone comes in, they take down 2 or 3 offices, and the next thing you know, they're 2, 5, 10. West Des Moines incubator is the same story, obviously.
Right.
So Regis is very much in growth mode. They're very bullish nationwide and in the metro, and looking at opportunities right now. So it'll be interesting to see how much they really buy into the market.
Is the WeWork group, I'll call them group, are they looking at Des Moines? Aside from what Regis has done?
I think I I was just using that as an example.
No, I know you
As
were, but
general,
I've been
yeah.
curious for
There's,
some
you know, there's
time.
there's another one down here on Locust Street, I think.
Sure, in the parking.
Yes.
Right.
And, you know, it's interesting to see that dynamic coming into town and seeing all these smaller companies coming
Mhm.
and growing.
Well, I think just the last couple of years have created that more entrepreneurial spirit and vibe for people to, want to go off and do their own thing. And so
Yeah.
again, it's a really bolsters that kind of that small to mid-sized office segment. And so you continue to see that, people that are maybe breaking off from a group they've been with, wanting to start their own business. And so that, to your point, the Regis concept has worked, and there's a lot of people that have graduated, gone out in the market looking for that next level of space. And I think that'll continue. Has been doing very well, and I think that'll continue, no doubt, in 2018.
What's happening on leases? Any length of leases, tenant improvement budgets? I mean, is there anything different this year from last year?
Nothing. I don't think anything different. Say for the last couple of years, the rental rate increases, 2% annual increases, have been probably instituted pretty much across the market. Leases, landlords are holding pretty firm on wanting to do 5-year leases as a standard or as a minimum or longer. Incentives, whether that be free rent or other allowances, are probably less and less depending on where you're at and what the building is. But the TI allowances, I think you've got to be willing to offer a pretty healthy TI package. All these things we were just talking about with amenities and remodels, refresh, that cost money, and construction costs are extremely high right now. So you're seeing probably healthy TI allowances in a lot of leases and deals. But so I think that will continue too into this year and even into 19.
Both on the construction costs and on the labor side, is that limiting office deals from getting done? Slowing them down?
It's impacting it for sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, 10 years ago, a $30 TI allowance was massive. I mean, you're getting a home run list of improvements for that. Today, it's probably double that from what we're seeing. I mean, you for a major, not to say you can't make 15, 20 bucks a work for a minor refresh in a space, but if you're really trying to do some sort of impactful, go to shell, complete something, you're probably close to 60. Maybe Chris, you could speak to, an option like Westfield, what you think from start to finish a turnkey office delivery looks like.
Yeah, no, I think it's absolutely impacting deals. And a shell, Westfield type of space, I think it would take probably at least $50 a square foot to do a typical type of build out on a space. And so we're seeing second generation spaces, those existing office buildings that need a remodel or a refresh, easily $20, $25, $30 a square foot, and that's just kind of basic type of stuff. So
How does that compare to maybe 5 years ago?
5 years ago, it was certainly less, maybe half that. You go back 5, 10 years ago, you could do carpet, paint for, $5 to $10 a square foot, and now it's probably $10 a square foot or higher easily. So I'd say it's almost
as a result of the labor component?
Yeah, well, I think labor,
Trades.
cost materials, I think a little bit of everything.
We have a few major data centers that are happening around the metro that are
We heard that.
absorbing
Yes.
We heard that
some
yesterday.
resources, which it's great, but it's definitely having an impact, and maybe more so on that smaller to mid-office decision maker.
The trades are just so, there's just not enough people to keep everybody.
I think mechanical, electrical, especially, you've seen that.
Especially.
You've got the electrical work that needs to be done, those
Mhm.
numbers are high, and it's just, they're
Yeah.
busy. They're
Carpenters are busy. I mean, you just can't keep enough, there's just so much work going on, and they're just busy, and there's not enough trades.
Well, how about for DLR? I mean, on the professional side of the equation
Yeah.
in the industry.
Well, all trades are just so backed up. We just have to be careful about the schedules that we're keeping with them. Nothing tremendous, but it's enough where it does impact if somebody wants something very quick.
Does it affect your ability to go out and bid jobs? I've heard a little bit of that.
I found that it's more the area
Mhm.
that we've had, in the Greater Des Moines area, it's not so bad. If you go into the outlying areas, it's a little bit more difficult, especially if you're looking more in the Iowa City, Waterloo, those areas are still haves okay, but you start going even further out, and it's a little bit more difficult.
Because one of the things that we had power breakfast last year talking about the population growth in Des Moines, and one of the topics that came up that we didn't address during that event though was the capacity of Des Moines to bring an outside, what the capacity was for Des Moines to bring an outside company in that might do a headquarters relocation type thing. Have you guys heard anything on that front, and or is Des Moines positioned well to be able to do something like that? Not necessarily Apple or Amazon perhaps, but even a larger company to come into this area?
From personal experience, so we worked with Federal Home Loan, who acquired the Seattle Federal Home Loan Bank, and it was the first Federal Home Loan Bank merger in history, so it was a big deal. Des Moines, in some capacity, competed with Seattle to bring some of that expertise here to town, and for a lot of different reasons, but some of the main reasons being our standard of living and all of the million number one on this list, 2 on this list, all the great attributes that we have. There was a pretty strategic decision to focus growth here in town, even with a 3-ish% unemployment rate. So from that direct example, they of course bought a building and planned all of that growth to happen in this market. So we are still seeing some of our larger clients focus growth in Des Moines, which I think is a good thing. Will the trend continue? I think it will, in the sense that we just have a lot of really cool things to offer as a city, but they have to be able to hire people, and that's, if there's a risk, that's where it's at.
Yeah, I guess I would agree with that. The unemployment rate certainly makes that a challenge, but as far as a company relocating a headquarters, that's probably a tough sell. You don't see that happen very much, but certainly reinvestment, with companies here and hiring, that's been huge. And I think that's where we're still got to continue to focus and sell and fight hard to keep those, everybody that we have here and help them grow and prosper, because that's where that growth's going to come from.
On the construction side, my impression would be that companies are spending all their money on amenities and furniture as opposed to actual building costs. Is that true? It has to be eating up more of their budgets than it would have been 20 years ago.
I think it just depends on the company and where they want to locate, building new or renovating. I think there's probably some better deals to renovate in some cases, but not all cases. So I think it depends on the company and what they want to do and what their outlook is.
What's the cost of new construction, just in general? We talked about renovating a little bit.
I think it depends on the material. I mean, just a gut shot number that we're seeing is anywhere between $2 to $225 per square foot, and that probably includes some level of landlord delivery, and then you get into the whole finishes side. So it's definitely still a significant driver, but I would 100% agree with the fact that it's not just the shell that people are focused on, it's how they're programming that space within the shell. And so the furniture companies, I don't know how much you have furniture companies on any panel, you should, because those guys are pushing design and a whole level of cost into a real estate decision that you absolutely have to factor into the overall project cost.
Absolutely. You need to make sure that you have those costs in there. Otherwise, people just can't. The cost of the furniture alone can be pretty extreme, depending on what their expectations are moving in and the other amenities they want to go into that facility.
I think the other component too is still technology. It's still a big chunk of that budget. We've seen security. Security is still a big thing for a lot of companies, large and small. But technology, whether it's the high-speed connectivity, networking, cabling, video conferencing, TVs in conference rooms and elsewhere, and all those are connected, wired together, et cetera. So technology, the amenities, the construction itself, and the furniture, all those are
You know, that's an interesting, the security aspect is an interesting point. I'm always surprised when I walk into a business, whether it's principal or ITA and you know, they want to see my driver's license and all that. Me. But anyway.
Not a very trustworthy guy.
But one of the things I wonder about, this came up on a rehab for the Civic Center, and they were talking about designing for user safety on the outside and the public spaces outside. Are you running into that on an office world also, commercial side?
In my bubble, I do all the time. You know, 801 Grand has, for a long time, had the unique security measures in place where it is, you're going in, you're checking at a reception/security desk, and then you're gaining access into the building. You know, there's certainly a level of public access that is much more open. What we found, you know, for the last 6 months or so, the marketing efforts is people are actually looking for that. It's probably one thing that we didn't even acknowledge as a real strength for the asset. It's extremely expensive to program that into a building. So the fact that, and Principal's not the only example, or 801's not the only example, there are others. But
no, they're all over town.
Yeah, we are seeing more and more of that where there's, and part of it I think is just spaces are so open now that you don't want someone just kind of randomly walking in and coming into your work environment and disturbing the people as they're working in their different project teams. So that security to gain access to that space is now becoming more of a focus and probably is going to continue to grow, would be my guess.
What about outside investment? Anything coming in on that side of things?
Yeah, more than ever. I mean,
Yeah.
Cap Square, out-of-state investor. On our investment arm, we've seen actually most of the sales that we participated in 2017 were out-of-state buyers, and that's just purely from a pure investment, less occupier standpoint. But definitely, a lot of money from outside of Iowa still looking at the state.
Is there a particular region of the country that's coming, or international that's coming from?
Not international, I guess, for us. I haven't seen that yet, but West Coast and East Coast for sure. Texas money, for whatever reason, there's been quite a bit. California has been strong for the last 10 years, really quietly strong and gaining. East Coast was the first time, I think last year, I'd seen a couple groups come from that. Cap Square really kind of tested the market with that, with ultimately being bought by a Colorado group. But
Why do you think that is, or why do you think that there's
stable returns, low unemployment, opportunity to grow. We've just started the credit of Des Moines. There's just been a really strong story for this market, and that exposure is really hit on a national level at this point.
Does it have any effects here and locally, having that money coming in that way, or what?
Cap rates are tight. If you're following the investment market, we follow it very closely. I can't remember any time in the last 15 or 16 years that cap rates have been this aggressive. So especially multifamily. Office, there's maybe a little bit of room there, but we feel like some of that stuff has to be peaking at this point. And we're saying that, but we're still 200 to 300 basis points better than the West Coast option. So I could be completely wrong, but I haven't seen it in this market, at least in my career.
On an office deal, what is the cap rate?
If you're a
Standard.
2-tenant, high credit, newer construction building, we're seeing stuff in the high 6s and low 7s in the office world. In the industrial world, we've participated in some stuff in that similar range. You can still find, if you're 20-year-old construction, local/regional credit, maybe multiple tenants and a little bit of capital requirement that needs to go into it. Maybe you're 7.5, might creep into an 8 here and there, but 3 years ago finding an 8 cap was a lot easier than it is today.
What about threats? Anything that cause you pause as we head into 2018 and 2019? Anything that would happen that would cause you to go? That would be a negative sign for the market.
I guess a couple of things would come to mind. Number one is just is the high cost construction. I think that's still a threat. Just construction being so high, and whether it's people wanting to build or reinvest or in their space, that can be a detriment. It is a detriment. It maybe keeps people from going ahead to do that. It makes deals harder to finalize and figure out. this high cost construction, I would say. The other thing maybe is, in this business of being in the office market, you need jobs, you need growth, and with unemployment being so low, I don't know if that is going to potentially pull back on, with just the ability to find good help out there. It certainly may. You may see a little slowdown in people just hiring because the labor pool. It's just there's not enough people. There's a lot of people retiring. You've got people, certainly candidates out there, but the unemployment rate is so low that may be a threat. The only other thing in our world with the office space is, I think there still is that kind of work from home trend going on a little bit. I think some companies are maybe experienced it and it's not going so well, but some are certainly still wanting to experiment with it, and that's going on. And technology is making it easier and easier to do that. And some companies are going through that analysis and making a determination it's going to be cheaper to do it. Our employees want to do it. It's attractive to them. So we're seeing that work from home, and that just decreases that footprint, square foot that offices and companies need in their space. Even though they're hiring, they may not need more space because people are working from home. So I can see that as being a challenge and threat too.
Do you find that in larger companies
Yeah.
or smaller ones?
Yeah, I think it's mostly larger, but
Yeah.
it certainly can apply to both. I think it's a lot of sales service organizations that people are working from wherever. So I think it's but in the most cases it is the larger groups that are experimenting and using that method.
It's been pretty interesting. I don't know, I guess on a mass local level what you guys have seen, but JLL did a study a year ago or so, and it basically talked about how while you have this work from home strategy, you also have more collaborative space. So it's almost like a few years ago it was, go work at Starbucks if you want to, and now it's almost gone the other way. It feels like where people are programming Starbucks into their space. So it's to me, I feel like it's rubber banding a little bit, and square footages maybe are still relatively stable because people are not working at Starbucks anymore. They're working at their office Starbucks, which maybe is a glorified break room with fruit on the counter.
To that point, I was talking to a banker the other day who promotes his inside advertising is promoting the Starbucks next door. His proximity to Starbucks.
Well, I think it's just having the flexibility. People wanting the flexibility to, if they have to work from home because a child is sick, then they have that opportunity to do so. But they want to be at work because it is a good area to collaborate with the other employees, and they want to have a good team environment. And so I think it's just having that flexibility throughout.
We haven't talked about this trend yet. I'll be the guy to bring it up. So we've talked about Starbucks. We're also seeing how close am I to breweries? Do I have a keg in the break room? If so, when does that thing turn on? It's actually a conversation with a lot of users that everyone's going to say, what's Principal doing? What's Holmes Murphy doing? Are these guys, is it an open bar at 3 o'clock? So we actually had a brewery event, leave it to JLL, where we hosted at New American Brew. It was part of our discussion was, how are people programming not only coffee, but also the happy hour into their office space. So that could be an interesting trend for next year as well.
Around the happy hours alive and well, right? That's a good point.
And other activities.
Right.
I mean, besides just having the happy hour, I mean, there's, it's like, well, let's have a ping pong tournament.
Yep.
Or, it could be just some games or something that would be, let's take a break in the afternoon and do something fun.
So next year's roundtables we moved to 4 o'clock. JLL's office.
Right.
There you go.
Ping pong and booze and
You got it.
office space.
We'll record that conversation. Well, you started on that path. We're nearing the end of the time. What are some other things that maybe we haven't talked about that we should be talking about in the office segment?
I think one thing that the change management, but we touched on it just briefly. I think more companies, as they're growing and diversing into larger spaces or different space, they need that help with making sure that they're making these changes and also communicating to their employees what's happening and what's going on. I think it's a big benefit to the companies, and it makes it much easier for them to understand these changes, because we have such a diverse age group going from millennials to baby boomers, that baby boomers are kind of resisting this change of going to open spaces and just having the huddle rooms and small conference rooms. That it's good for them to understand that these changes are good and that it will help with the collaboration for all the employees.
Just to piggyback on one comment there, I will say, on some of the groups that have gone through occupancy planning and workplace strategy that have that wide range, and that's a huge point, I have seen the baby boomer generation and kind of that, I don't know where I fit into this, but somewhere in the middle range, that had been in a private office at one point that are now in some sort of open collaborative area, have really embraced it far more than I that's actually been one of the bigger surprises. Maybe it's either the opposite. If the younger workforce is probably just used to it or doesn't know any different. But I think there's been a real silver lining coming out of that generation that's older than 35 or 30 or whatever years old it is, that have actually really embraced that. And that's been kind of cool to see, I guess, from my perspective.
Any research into the Gen Z folks that might be coming in? Any changes that they might?
Xboxes. Video games. No.
And I realize that might be a little bit early on that front. We did a little roundtable.
I'm still trying to figure out what Gen Z is.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's part of the discussion. That the generations are kind of shrinking because
Yeah.
the rapid changes that they've lived through
Yep.
are dramatically different than what millennials did or Gen X. So I was just curious if there's any research on that.
It's just, I'm trying to keep up with my kids. So I'm trying to stay in the forefront with them. And it's just like, I'm on Snapchat. I'm doing these things because I'm trying to keep up with them. So I think as more people understand that they can, go forward with this and see that it's going to be a benefit for them, I think it's a good thing.
Anything else we haven't talked about yet?
How's your pipeline of work? Is it still?
It's been good, yeah. We've been doing a lot of work all around the country and working on some projects just about everywhere. So I can't.
You guys are usually always at the forefront
It's
of
just
the
steady
projects.
and things are going forward and yeah.
Any particular sector or?
A lot of civil work right now. We've been seeing a lot of justice and civil work happening. We've definitely seen an increase. Workplace has been steady. Higher education, again, we've seen, depending on what portion of it, we had a lot of resident halls, but we're seeing still some other areas increasing.
Stray away from office here for a second, but
Yeah.
I'm curious on the civil side, is there any trepidation regarding the infrastructure budget? There's a lot of talk now that the administration wants to dump more of that back on the states and localities. We get back to this concept of federal mandates with no funding possibly.
I haven't heard any of that, but
Yeah.
I'm sure there's more talk about it,
Mhm.
but workplace has been very steady, very, growth has been good, but I can't say it's been outrageous, it's just been steady growth.
One thing we didn't talk too much about, and we did a little bit more last year when they were both kind of underway, but the principal project that's now complete and then the Come and Go project that's getting near that. Has what effects have those two projects had on other people's perceptions when they're thinking about office spaces? Has it? Do people talk about those projects when
To that, but so we talked a little bit earlier about taking kind of this old blocky box and turning into something that features natural light. I mean, 7-Eleven High Street, if you haven't been into it, it's 400,000 square feet of a box that they essentially accentuated and hollowed out the center of it to bring natural light into what is one of the coolest programmed spaces that you can find. It's got the cafe, it's got the giant chessboard, and this huge, beautiful kind of open area where they host events.
Cantilever conference rooms, right?
Yeah, it's almost like an MC Escher drawing where you've got these stairwells that appear into conference rooms. It's a really, really cool project. Come and Go is another one of those where, I haven't been on the inside of it from the exterior and the renderings. You can tell there's some really creative and neat things that'll happen there. That's the pinnacle, right? So I think our challenge, especially in brokerage and I guess in all facets, is really how do you grab a sample of that and put it into somebody's space that isn't principal or Come and Go? And it's possible. It's definitely achievable. If anything, we can learn from those projects and grab, the few key things that happen that really drive the workspace.
I'll give you guys, Kent, any final
I'm
questions?
good, really appreciate it.
So I'll give you each a chance to give kind of a closing thought, and we'll go ahead and start down on the ending.
Okay. Well, I think there's a lot of continued optimism for 2018. I think without the office space world, I think going back to the comment you made, flexible office space is clearly, I think, a driving force right now. And flexible meaning, a place where you can come in. Maybe the offices are getting a little bit smaller, but that's okay. I think people are okay with that. Maybe they're moving to the interior, but you've got that space where you can come in and still have that private me space, quiet space to work, and still have a place to go meet with folks and collaboration types area and access to amenities. That's where things are going. I think that's what we'll continue to see with office space, and I would suggest that things are going to be that we're going to just continue to kind of slowly move ahead and progress and have another great year.
I totally agree with that. I think just the spaces itself, maybe not so much the spaces are getting smaller. Maybe it's the workstation is getting a little smaller because there's such another diverse areas to go to besides being at your workstation. So having those collaborative areas, the coffee shop type areas to go through, I think just having those variety of different spaces for work collaboration is just huge. I think it's just going to be a steady growth. Keep going. Looking forward to the next couple of years.
Echo all of that, and we're cautiously optimistic for next year. I think we're definitely keeping an eye on these larger blocks of space. We think they'll have an impact. We don't think it's going to be a dramatic impact, in part because of the growth of those middle-sized customers that are still seeing that expansion that will happen. So that, to us, we think that's going to result in more second, third generation space being absorbed. So a little different than 2017, but still a positive year, and again, cautious optimism.
Well, that'll do it for us. We're just about out of time here, and our best story ideas always come from our audience. And so, if something today spurred a thought or an idea, and you want to reach out to us, Kent Darr's contact information will be up on the screen, and I'd encourage you to reach out his way. Thank you again to our panelists as well. I appreciate the time today.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.